when he was stuck creatively. He would come into the room, in my room at the house, and he would say, "Has anything interesting happened to you lately?" So I knew he was stuck. He was looking for something to do. But I grew up.
They shared the same set, the same spotlight, and the same historic success. To the audience, Carroll O'Connor and Rob Reiner looked like the perfect clash on All in the Family. But behind the laughter, something far darker was unfolding. They didn't just disagree. They barely tolerated each other, and the tension turned personal fast. The attacks became so intense that production was forced to stop, and the show's creator had to step in. Stay with me as we uncover what really happened on that set. Because once you know the truth, you'll be stunned by how much hatred was hiding in plain sight. People always believed that Carroll O'Connor and Rob Reiner were close friends, trusted colleagues who grew together through years of collaboration. That assumption was wrong. Long before the public sensed anything, the two men had already become enemies. By the time All in the Family premiered in January 1971, O'Connor was a seasoned actor with decades of experience across stage, film, and television. To him, every gesture mattered. Every line carried weight, and acting was never activism. It was interpretation. Rob Reiner entered the show from a very different place. Younger, politically outspoken, and deeply shaped by the social upheaval of the late 1960s. Reiner viewed All in the Family not just as entertainment, but as a cultural weapon. His character, Michael "Meathead" Stivix, wasn't simply Archie Bunker's son-in-law. He was written as Archie's ideological opposite. That was why the real rupture came early. During rehearsals, O'Connor noticed something that immediately set off alarms. Reiner didn't wait for direction. He interrupted table reads. He challenged line deliveries. To O'Connor, this wasn't collaboration, it was confrontation. More than once, rehearsals stalled because Reiner openly argued the moral framing of a scene, insisting Archie needed to be clearly wrong, not layered or human. Of course, O'Connor bristled. He believed Reiner wasn't just pushing the script, he was policing it. Many times, O'Connor stopped mid-rehearsal, stared at Reiner, and refused to continue until the room settled. The message was unmistakable. You do not run this set. From that moment on, something hardened between them. Later, O'Connor would describe it plainly. Reiner didn't act like a fellow performer. He acted like a judge. In O'Connor's mind, Reiner blurred the line between character and self. He didn't just argue with Archie Bunker. He argued at Carroll O'Connor. And that crossed a line O'Connor never forgot. As All in the Family exploded into the most watched sitcom in America, Norman Lear began to realize that the tension between Carroll O'Connor and Rob Reiner intensified rather than softened. Lear later acknowledged that the ideological clash at the heart of the show didn't stop at the script. It followed the actors onto the soundstage, into rehearsals, and sometimes into moments where production itself stalled. Jean Stapleton, who played Edith Bunker, privately admitted that the atmosphere between O'Connor and Reiner was uncomfortable, but controlled. She noticed how O'Connor would physically withdraw when Reiner spoke off script, leaning back, folding his arms, breaking eye contact. These were acts of resistance. O'Connor was freezing Reiner out in plain sight. Rob Reiner, meanwhile, did not back down. He regularly challenged scenes he felt softened Archie's bigotry too much. During script discussions, Reiner argued that Archie had to be exposed, corrected, and defeated clearly every time. O'Connor pushed back hard. He believed Archie's power came from being recognizable, not humiliated. After Reiner questioned O'Connor's delivery yet again, O'Connor stopped the run through mid-scene. He didn't raise his voice. He simply looked toward Lear and said nothing. The silence dragged. Cameras were rolling. Crew stood still. Lear later admitted that moment forced him to step in to restore authority. O'Connor had drawn a line without saying a word. He felt cornered by Reiner's constant ideological pressure. While Reiner viewed his arguments as moral clarity, O'Connor experienced them as personal judgment. He felt Reiner wasn't acting with him, but acting against him. That perception never left him. Years later, O'Connor explained his resentment in one of his most quoted statements. Rob always thought he was smarter than everyone else. This was O'Connor diagnosing what he believed was Reiner's core flaw. To him, Reiner didn't respect the craft. He weaponized it, and O'Connor found that unforgivable. What deepened the hostility was Reiner's growing praise in the press. Critics often describe Michael Stivic as the voice of reason, and Archie as the obstacle to progress. O'Connor read those reviews, he internalized them. To him, Reiner wasn't just winning arguments on screen, he was winning them culturally, and O'Connor felt the cost was his character's humanity. Privately, O'Connor reached his breaking point. In one interview late in life, he stated without hesitation, "I've worked with many people I couldn't stand, but Rob topped them all." That sentence was final. And yet the cruel irony remains. All in the Family became legendary because the conflict was real. The father and son-in-law clashes felt dangerous because they were. The anger had weight because it wasn't written. It was lived. The audience laughed, the network celebrated, and two men walked onto the same set every day knowing they despised each other. But when the applause faded and the cameras finally stopped rolling, the question wasn't whether the conflict had been real. It was whether it could survive without an audience. That answer came quickly. The feud survived the final episode. When All in the Family officially ended in 1979, many inside CBS quietly assumed the hostility between Carroll O'Connor and Rob Reiner would dissolve with distance. It didn't. It simply lost its audience. O'Connor moved directly into Archie Bunker's place, carrying the character forward, but leaving Reiner behind. Off camera, he was noticeably lighter, more at ease, something Gene Stapleton later remarked on privately. Yet whenever Reiner's name surfaced, O'Connor's tone hardened immediately. The resentment had not faded. It had settled. By the early 1980s, the two men occupied entirely different Hollywood worlds. O'Connor immersed himself in dramatic television, eventually reinventing his public image with In the Heat of the Night in 1988. Reiner, meanwhile, was reinventing himself as a director, earning industry admiration with This Is Spinal Tap in 1984 and Stand By Me in 1986. Their paths no longer crossed, but the bitterness followed O'Connor. In interviews throughout the 1980s and 1990s, O'Connor refused to soften history. He consistently rejected the idea that their feud was exaggerated or misunderstood. When asked directly, he dismissed the term creative differences, insisting it minimized what he felt was sustained personal disrespect. Rob Reiner, by contrast, remained almost entirely silent. He did not challenge O'Connor's version of events. He did not attempt public reconciliation. Those close to Reiner described his stance as deliberate. He had moved on professionally and emotionally. They never shared a stage again. They never acknowledged each other's success. It simply froze in place, unchanged, unresolved, and waiting for nothing. When Carroll O'Connor died on June 21, 2001 at the age of 76, Hollywood paused. Networks replayed All in the Family. Critics revisited Archie Bunker's legacy. Former colleagues spoke about O'Connor's discipline, intelligence, and moral seriousness. The industry remembered a giant. One voice, however, remained notably restrained. Rob Reiner did not step forward with a public gesture of reconciliation. No attempt to correct the record, no reflection on their turbulent years together beyond acknowledging O'Connor's importance to television history. What Reiner offered was professional respect, nothing more. That restraint mattered. Reiner did not rewrite the past, and he did not challenge O'Connor's long-standing hostility. He allowed O'Connor's words to stand as they were, harsh, final, and unresolved. By the time of his death, O'Connor had already endured profound personal loss, most notably the suicide of his son, Hugh, in 1995. That tragedy reshaped O'Connor's public life, pushing him toward advocacy and compassion. Yet even then, he never revisited his feelings toward Reiner. The silence between them had hardened into permanence. Reiner moved forward, continuing his career, rarely speaking about O'Connor again, and O'Connor left behind a record that needed no clarification. He had said what he meant while alive and never took it back. In the end, the most unsettling truth is this: some conflicts don't resolve. They simply outlive the people who carried them, and that silence became the final word. So, here's the question that lingers long after the credits roll. Was Carroll O'Connor defending artistic integrity, or did personal pride turn a professional clash into a lifelong feud? And was Rob Reiner's silence dignity or avoidance? Let us know what you think in the comments. If stories like this reveal a side of Hollywood you've never seen before, subscribe to the channel and stay with us for the truths that were never meant to be spoken out loud.